I'm the one who signs off on discharge paperwork, not the one who does the saving, and that's usually as close as I get to drama, until the afternoon a chart with the name Dorothy Callahan landed on my desk and a man I hadn't seen in 3 years came looking for the file behind it. My name's Corinne Ashby-Reyes, and I run medical records and discharge coordination at a district hospital where most of my days are spent chasing signatures, not stories. But some stories chase you back. It started, for me, with a phone call. Marcus Ferro, paramedic, asking whether I could pull an old intake form, a woman he'd transported 3 years earlier, before he'd transferred stations, before he'd become the kind of man who apparently thought about a single elderly patient long enough to track down her paperwork on his day off. I told him that wasn't how records worked, that I couldn't just hand him a stranger's file because he asked nicely. He laughed, low and a little embarrassed, and said, "I know, I'm not asking as a paramedic. I'm asking because I want to send her a card." That threw me. I'd filed 1,000 names through that office and never once had anyone come back wanting to say thank you to a chart instead of a person. I asked him why now, 3 years later, and he got quiet in a way that made me put my pen down. He told me about the night, a hip fracture, an 80-year-old woman named Dorothy who wouldn't stop apologizing for the trouble she was causing while a resident named Priya Nandakumar, half asleep on her feet, tried to keep her calm. He told me about the trauma bay, about a nurse named Beatriz Osei reading the room before anyone spoke, about a respiratory therapist and an MRI tech and a pharmacist and a charge nurse, all of them circling that one small emergency like it was the center of something bigger than any of them realized at the time. And somewhere in the middle of that chaos, he said, he'd looked up and caught the eye of a hospital tech he hadn't seen in years, Hannah Reyes, standing under the ambulance bay lights like no time had passed at all. I sat there with the phone against my ear, filing cabinets humming behind me, and felt something I wasn't expecting. Envy, a little. Not of Marcus and Hannah specifically, but of the whole shape of what he was describing. The kind of night where a stranger's crisis accidentally hands you back someone you'd lost track of. My job doesn't have nights like that. My job has manila folders and insurance codes and doctors who forget to initial page 2. So why does an old intake form matter now? I asked him. Because Dorothy's the reason I ended up talking to Hannah again, he said. And I figure the least I can do is let the woman know her bad night turned into somebody's good one. I want to say I processed the request efficiently and professionally, the way I'm supposed to. What I actually did was pull the file myself, read through it slower than necessary, and notice things a records clerk isn't really trained to notice. How many different hands had touched that one case? How many separate small kindnesses stacked up in a single overnight chart? A pharmacist's careful note. A translator's signature confirming Dorothy hadn't needed her services after all, but had stayed nearby anyway. A dispatcher's timestamp. A front desk log with a woman named Farah's handwriting, noting the code called out over the intercom in a hand that wasn't quite steady. It made me think about how much of this job is invisible unless somebody bothers to go looking, and how rarely anybody does. I wonder if that's true everywhere people work in shifts and handoffs, nurses, teachers, line cooks, whoever, that the version of the story that gets remembered is never the whole one, just whoever happened to be standing closest when it got told. I mailed Marcus the discharge address, technically against 3 different policies, and told him if anyone asked, he never got it from me. He showed up at my window a week later with 2 coffees and a story about how Dorothy had actually written back, a shaky little note thanking the young man who wheeled me in like I mattered. He slid 1 coffee across the counter to me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You could have just called it in," I said. "I wanted to see the face behind the files," he said, and I felt my ears go warm in a way that had nothing to do with the heating vent above my desk. I won't pretend it turned into anything dramatic. It turned into him stopping by more than a records request ever justified, and me pretending I didn't rearrange my lunch break around it. It turned into learning slowly that the people who hold a hospital together are rarely the ones anyone writes songs about. The clerks, the dispatchers, the interpreters, the techs who show up at 3 in the morning for a stranger and then go home to lives nobody at work ever asks about. Dorothy Callahan never knew my name. She never will. But her one hard night on Cypress Street rippled sideways through more lives than her own: a resident, a nurse, a therapist, a pharmacist, a dispatcher, and eventually, unlikely as it sounds, the woman who just stamps the paperwork after everyone else goes home. I keep wondering how many other charts sitting in my filing cabinets have stories like that folded up inside them, waiting on somebody curious enough, or lonely enough, or brave enough to come back and ask. I still have that coffee cup on my desk. I never washed it. Some things you just don't want to file away.